Hello and welcome to this recording, which provides potential applicants with an overview of Key Action 2 strategic partnerships for higher education. If you are considering applying for funding under this call, please note that projects must start between the 1st of September 2017 and the 31st of January 2018. Projects can be between 24 and 36 months long, with no project ending later than August 31st, 2020. The Erasmus Plus programme has significantly evolved from predecessor programmes such as the Lifelong Learning Programme, and it is now much more strategic with clear objectives and priorities. Under previous calls, we have received feedback from assessors which showed that some organisations were weak in making their applications personal and relevant to the organisations of the partnership. The assessors also commented that some applications did not explicitly show how their project linked to the Erasmus Plus priorities. It is important to note that your project will be assessed against its relevance. If you are considering applying for funding under strategic partnerships in the field of higher education, you must ensure that your project addresses at least one of the priorities outlined by the European Commission for the 2017 call. Each year, the European Commission sets horizontal and sector-specific priorities for Key Action 2. These are priorities that the European Commission would like Key Action 2 projects to address or target. Horizontal priorities are priorities that are applicable across all fields of education, training and youth. You also then have sector-specific priorities, and those are relevant to each individual particular field of training, education and youth, and these are also set each year. To be funded or considered for funding, strategic partnerships must address either at least one horizontal priority or at least one sector-specific priority relevant to the field of education, training and youth that is mostly impacted. It is really important that you clearly demonstrate to the assessor how your project is relevant to both your organisation and the priorities of the Erasmus Plus programme. On screen now you can see the field-specific priorities for higher education partnerships. These are important to consider because depending on the priority and the objectives addressed by the project, you should involve the most appropriate and diverse range of partners in order to benefit from their different experiences, profiles and specific expertise and to produce relevant and high-quality project results. As I stated before, your project must address at least one sector-specific or one horizontal priority. The priorities on screen are only two of the sector-specific priorities for higher education, and if you would like to look at the other priorities, you can do so by taking a look at page 122 of the 2017 programme guide. On screen now is the list of countries that can apply for funding under the 2017 call for Key Action 2 strategic partnerships. Organisations from these countries can also be partners in strategic partnership projects. The programme countries are those that belong to the European Union and also include the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, Iceland, Norway, Liechtenstein and Turkey. There are also partner countries which can be partners in a project, but they cannot be a lead applicant. If partner countries are countries based outside Europe, and if you would like more information about partner countries, you can find that on page 23 of the programme guide. We will move on to talk about partner countries now in a little bit more detail. So now to look at the partner composition, how you must construct the partnership for your project. So all Key Action 2 projects are organisation-led. Individuals cannot apply directly for a grant to the national agency. While a staff member can complete the application form on behalf of their organisation, the project remains the organisation's responsibility even if that staff member leaves the organisation. A strategic partnership is transnational and must involve a minimum of 3 organisations from 3 different programme countries. There is no maximum number of partners you can add to the application form. However, the budget for project management and implementation is capped and equivalent to 10 partners. All participating organisations must be identified at the time of applying for a grant. As a general rule, strategic partnerships target the cooperation between organisations established in programme countries, that is countries within Europe. However, strategic partnerships can involve organisations from partner countries, and those are countries outside Europe. Please note that organisations from partner countries outside Europe can only be part of a Key Action 2 project as partners and not as applicants. And they can only be partners if their participation brings an essential added value to the project. This has to be clearly justified in the narrative section of the application e-form. Please note that if the partner country is not deemed as eligible, the entire application will also be considered ineligible and will not be sent forward for further consideration. If you are planning to include a partner country, we encourage you strongly to consider whether or not the role could be filled by an organisation based in a programme country within Europe. Please note that activities of learners as well as long-term activities of staff from or to partner countries are not eligible under Key Action 2 Strategic Partnership. Please also note that any higher education institution based in a programme country and participating in a strategic partnership project must hold the Erasmus Charter of Higher Education, or ECHE, before applying. Please be aware that the applicant organisations must be legally registered in the United Kingdom to apply to the UK National Agency. For more information about eligible participating organisations, please take a look at page 127 of the 2017 Programme Guide, a link to which should be provided below this video. Okay, now to look at where to apply. While your project will include a number of organisations from across Europe, only the lead organisation of the partnership should submit an application, and this submission is made on behalf of the whole partnership. This application should be submitted to the national agency of the lead applicant. So for example, if you had a UK organisation leading the application, they would submit the application form to the UK national agency. Please note that project partners do not need to submit the same application to their own national agency. Higher education projects under Strategic Partnership for Key Action 2 are multi-beneficiary grants, and this means that if your project is funded, the lead organisation will receive the contract and the funds. The lead organisation is then required to organise their inter-organisational agreements with partners and arrange the dispersion of the funds for the project. Just as a reminder, the deadline for applications under Key Action 2 Strategic Partnerships for 2017 is Thursday, the 29th of March 2017 at 11 AM UK time or 12 o'clock Brussels time. I can't stress enough to you how important it is that you submit your application well in advance of this deadline. Last year, many organisations left it to the last minute to submit their applications and faced technical difficulties. We cannot accept any late applications. Anything submitted after 11 AM UK time will not be considered, and it will be considered late and ineligible. Considering that this deadline is applicable to all sectors of the Erasmus Plus programme, the UK National Agency will be extremely busy in the lead-up to this date. By submitting early, you allow yourself enough time to contact us and for us to have enough time to support you in rectifying any problems you are experiencing. So we do please recommend that you do not leave it until the last minute to submit your application. We're now going to move on to take a look at the budget for strategic partnership projects. So an Erasmus Plus grant is made up of different budget categories, which together make up your total grant amount. Understanding these different categories will help you with the application. So first of all, we have project management and implementation funds, and these will be automatically added to your grant total as it is calculated according to the length of your project. You can see on screen the wide variety of other activities it can be used for. One of the biggest questions we get asked is, can organisations use funds to provide supply cover for lecturers or teachers who are away from their job due to the project? So funded projects can use some of the funds in this budget category to do this if, without it, the project activities could not go ahead and if it directly facilitates the implementation of the project. You must keep in mind that if this leads to the poor quality of project implementation because there are not enough resources for the organisational and dissemination tasks, this would put your project at risk of having its final grant cut. It is up to the partnership to decide whether it can reallocate some of the money under this budget category and still ensure that the project is carried out as planned and to a high quality. In any case, beneficiaries will have to abide by the provisions set out in the organisation's grant agreement and in the 2017 programme guide. We also have the budget category for transnational project meetings. So transnational projects are used for partners in the project to meet and coordinate the project. Transnational project meeting funds can be applied for on the application form, although you need to strongly justify the need for meetings in terms of the number of meetings and the participants involved. Meetings should be limited to where virtual cooperation is not sufficient. So for example, you need to consider, would it be possible to conduct the meeting over Skype rather than face-to-face? If the answer to that question is yes, you should not apply for that particular meeting. However, if you feel that the transnational project meeting needs to be conducted in person, by all means go ahead and apply for it, but you do need to justify that in the application form. Okay, so the two budget categories that you can see on screen now, special needs support and exceptional costs, are based on real costs. This means that you can enter any amount into the box within the application form. Before doing this, however, it is important to consider whether what you are applying for is eligible, and please consider if it has been justified within the application form, and does this represent value for money. Special needs support can be requested as part of the application form. This budget is for additional costs directly related to participants with disabilities and accompanying persons. That includes costs related to travel and subsistence if justified. Please note that costs for any individuals with special needs will have to be claimed under the special needs support budget category and should not be requested through the budget categories travel and individual support, which we will look at later in this presentation. The request for financial support to cover special needs must be motivated and explained clearly in the application form. Disability is defined on page 11 of the 2017 programme guide. And please note that special needs support must be applied for at the application stage. You cannot apply for special needs support after the application stage. Therefore, if you think that there is a high possibility that you will need to support participants with a disability or special needs, you will need to detail this in the application form when you are applying. So now moving on to exceptional costs. Please note before I continue that the awarding of exceptional costs is by no means a given, and clear and full justification must be provided in the application form. Exceptional costs are based on actual costs and must be supported by invoices and receipts at final report. You must clearly reference the section of the application e-form where justification is given for exceptional costs that are being requested. Before requesting exceptional costs, please check whether costs cannot be covered under any other budget categories, most likely the project management and implementation budget. Exceptional costs can be requested only if they are critical to the success of the project and are services, goods or items that cannot be provided by the organisations involved in the project. Clear justification must be given within the application form that these conditions have been met. Exceptional costs, if eligible, can provide up to a maximum of 75% of the real cost of services, goods or items that would have to be subcontracted or procured by the project. Although it is not exhaustive, we have provided a list of eligible and ineligible exceptional costs in our written application guidance, a link to which should be below this video for you. When applying for exceptional costs, you must be clear on how the funding amount you are requesting has been calculated and that the amount represents 75% of the total cost of an item. Clear justification as to why the organisations involved in the project cannot provide the services or goods being requested through exceptional costs must be given in the text box below the exceptional cost section of the budget and in the appropriate areas of the application form. Please clearly reference the section of the application e-form where justification is given for exceptional costs that are being requested. You must demonstrate that each exceptional cost represents value for money. Now to move on to the budget categories for intellectual outputs and multiplier events. So intellectual outputs are only available to projects that support innovation. If you're applying under Strategic Partnership for Higher Education, your application must support innovation. So you can apply for intellectual outputs, and then if you apply for intellectual outputs, the multiplier events budget is available to you. Please note that you can only have multiplier events if you are producing an intellectual output as part of your project. So intellectual outputs are activities requiring substantial staff input in order to produce significant outputs of the project. They include publications, for example, academic papers, policy recommendations at different levels, need analysis, curriculum and course materials, etc. Funding for intellectual outputs can be claimed in section G.1 of the application form. To distinguish the production of such outputs from those covered by the funding automatically awarded to a project for project management and implementation, these outputs will have to be set out in detail under the relevant category, demonstrating clearly the concrete outputs and the related effort put into producing them. The output should be innovative and creative and be developed with a clear aim of transferability or usability to organisations other than those participating in the project. Please note that it is only considered an intellectual output if the proven potential for the wider exploitation and use can be shown, as well as the wider impact. For more information about what is considered an eligible intellectual output, please see our written application guidance, a link to which should be provided below this video. The production of an intellectual output is a process consisting of different steps that finally leads to the actual output itself. So, for example, conducting analysis, researching, translating, etc. Please note that these steps by themselves are not considered separate intellectual outputs. Staff costs for managers and administrative staff are already covered through the project management and implementation budget, but the project may be eligible for funding under intellectual output if their role working on the intellectual output is distinctly different from the regular role as a project management or administrator of the project as a whole. So in order for funding for staff time against staff types, for example managers and administrative staff, to be granted, clear and explicit justification must be given in the application. When selecting whether or not the staff time should be considered as a manager or administrative staff, you will need to consider the role the individual has on the intellectual output rather than the role they have in the organisation. So, for example, if you have a professor who would normally be considered a manager undertaking administrative duties for an intellectual output, you would select that staff time as administrative staff to reflect the role that they play in the project intellectual output, and not manager to reflect their usual day-to-day role in the organisation. So just bear in mind, when you're selecting the staff category for intellectual outputs, you need to reflect the role that that staff member will have when producing the intellectual output, and not the role that they have in a day-to-day work basis within your organisation. To be considered as staff for the development of intellectual outputs, the persons have to be either on a professional or voluntary basis involved in education, training or youth, and may be professors, teachers, trainers, school leaders, youth workers and non-educational staff. In all cases, the beneficiary organisation has to be able to demonstrate the formal link with the staff member concerned, whether the person is involved in the project on a professional or voluntarily basis. You will need staff timesheets, evidence of the person working at the organisation, and tangible evidence of the output itself. Staff working for the beneficiary organisation on the basis of a service contract, so for example translators or web designers, are not considered as staff of the organisation concerned, and their working time can therefore not be claimed under intellectual outputs. Now to move on to multiplier events. As I said before, multiplier events are only available to projects producing intellectual outputs. The aim of a multiplier event is to share intellectual outputs to individuals and organisations outside of the Erasmus Plus funded project. Multiplier events should disseminate and increase the impact of intellectual outputs. Multiplier events are organised by the partnership that are directly associated to one or more of the intellectual outputs developed through the work of the project. If your project is not planning to hold any multiplier events, you do not need to complete the multiplier events section. However, if you do not complete this section, you cannot request funding retrospectively. The aim of a multiplier event should be to disseminate the intellectual outputs of the project to a wider audience, and multiplier events should involve a large number of participants for organisations that are not already involved with the partnership itself. Such events can be organised at national or transnational level. Please note that multiplier events can only take place in the programme countries where the beneficiaries are located. Both the profile and number of participants will have to be justified, as well as the approach to attract and involve relevant external organisations and stakeholders. On screen now are the learning, teaching, training activities which can be applied for under Strategic Partnerships for Higher Education. Learning, teaching and training activities can be funded by a number of budget categories, which we will look at in the following slide. Please note that the durations shown on screen do not include travel time. This is important to consider when planning activities under the project. So when considering funding the budget category, for learning, teaching, training activities, you have to consider the different budgets that you can see on screen there. So first of all, we have travel. And for travel, you can apply for a contribution to the travel costs of participants, including accompanying persons, from their place of origin to the venue of the activity and return. Please carefully use the distance band calculator when claiming this budget in the application form. Please also read page 135 of the 2017 Programme Guide carefully. For individual support, you can apply for a unit cost per day covering the subsistence of participants, including accompanying persons during the activity. Individual support can be used to cover the accommodation and subsistence of participants while undertaking their mobility activity. If you plan long-term mobilities, there is another budget you can apply under, and we will be covering that on the next slide. There is a category which was new to 2016, and that is the expensive travel costs of participants from outermost regions and overseas countries and territories. I will cover that in more detail for you in the next slide. Before I do that, I just wanted to bring your attention to the budget category top-up for expensive domestic and travel costs. So this is for travel within one of the programme countries, and this is for when it is very costly for an individual to get from where they are based to the location of the activities. If you would like some more information about that, that is available in our programme guide on page 135. Additionally, if you would like more information about top-up for expensive domestic travel costs or examples, you can take a look in our written application guidance where we cover it in more detail. A link to that guidance should be provided underneath this video. Now moving on to linguistic support, which I touched on briefly before. So if you plan long-term mobilities, that is mobilities between 2 and 12 months, you can apply for linguistic support funding as part of the application. So linguistic support funding is designed to help contribute to costs linked to the support offered to participants in order for them to improve their knowledge of the language of instruction or work. As I said, this funding, linguistic support, is only available for activities lasting between 2 and 12 months. Under the learning, teaching and training activities section of the application, you can also apply for exceptional costs related to the expensive travel costs for participants from or to outermost regions and overseas countries and territories. So under this exceptional cost category, that is a kind of top-up for individuals who are from outermost regions or overseas countries and territories of a country, and you can now claim for that for incoming and outgoing. Please don't confuse that with the top-up for domestic travel costs. As you can see here, top-up for domestic travel costs is just for, as it clearly states, domestic travel, whereas the exceptional costs for expensive travel costs for participants from and to outermost regions is for kind of transnational. If you would like more information about this, please do take a look in our written guidance. So to conclude, I'd just like to remind you of the support that we have in the run-up to the 29th of March deadline. So we've got the written application guidance available on the How to Apply page of the Erasmus Plus website. We also have a YouTube video to accompany this recording, and that goes through how to actually complete the application form. To accompany those videos, we have one-to-one telephone support sessions. So that is for Key Action 2 applicants who are considering applying and want to discuss their kind of project ideas with us. There will be a link to that registration in the video, in the description below this video, so please do click on that link and register for our videos if you're interested. Or if when you're completing the application form you have any general questions, you can contact us on our help desk. So the phone number is on screen there, or you can drop us an email. The phone lines are open from 10 till 4 Monday to Friday, and we do recommend that you get your questions in as soon as you possibly can, really, to allow us time to respond to you. I suppose all that remains to be said is thank you very much for your attention today, and best of luck with your application form. Many thanks.